Hello and welcome to the Two Ciaráns podcast on keeping up with the Clann. Basically, we're going to try and do a podcast every other week, trying to interview some new players, some old players, and anybody from about the club. And it's going to be with my co-host Kieran Bradley and myself, Ciarán McCartan, or Hod, that is known to many people around the club that I usually get now, and also Brad, what he usually gets. But our first interviewee on the Two Ciaráns podcast is double All-Ireland winner Michael McAlister and the first choice goalie for the Clann seniors. So hello Mickey, how you doing?
Hello lads, how you doing?
So basically what we're going to do, we're going to go through Mickey's career basically, ask him, a few questions about what his highlights, what's his things that maybe didn't go as well down through the Clann career or even with his county career. So so basically the first question is to you, Mickey, is like how did you get started in football, or when do you first remember getting started in football?
Well, mine was kind of a weird one because I had never played Gaelic for any club until I moved to Banbridge. Like my dad worked in universities. I was actually born in London. My ma's English, and I moved to Derry City when I was about 3 or 4. And there is Gaelic clubs, but you would have it done a long time to find one. So I ended up moving here when I was about say 13, and I moved to the Abbey, and they don't play soccer.
No.
And I think it was Mickey Gillen or Brad's dad, Jarvan, says, right, you better come up with us. So the first time I ever started playing Club GA was with Clann when I was 13. And I can remember Derry winning the All-Ireland in 93. They came back into the city and had a big parade. And Anthony Joe used to be one of our neighbours when he lived in Derry City. But apart from that, I was quite a late starter. I know a goalkeeper's a goalkeeper, but
and did you start out as a goalkeeper straight away?
I was always too fat to do anything else.
You were like me then. Everybody just stuck me in the nets too.
I quite enjoyed it though. You know how to run.
Mickey, am I not right in saying that when you were younger you had a few trials for some soccer teams as well? Is that true, or is that false, or did they make that up?
No. Do you remember when your boy O'Leary was in charge of Leeds?
Mm-hmm.
There was a big massive Irish contingent.
That's right.
Yeah. They set up an academy in Ireland, and the north and the south had two separate academies, but everybody kind of who was sort of scouted that academy, you didn't really go to Leeds. You trained like once or twice a week with Leeds Academy, but in Ireland. But because there were so many players going across, like you did go over for like a tournament where you'd represent them or anything like that. But see, to be honest, like really sophisticated, they would like measure your bone density and structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I never grew over 6 foot, and they knew straight away whether I was good enough or not. I wasn't tall enough.
Yeah.
I sort of put to the side, and I went over to a couple other times over to like lower league teams in Manchester, but that was kind of, if they're going to take 1 year, they might as well take 5 years type thing. But yeah, it was an enjoyable opportunity because goalkeeper coaches were a big thing then. They weren't in the GA at all. And even the wee like drills that I learned there that I used to take back and do the club was a big help.
And did you play all the levels with the Abbey, as in like Granafast, Cornogue, right up until McCrory?
My first year was when I joined the school was Cornogue. So I played all the levels all the way up. I ended up doing nets in McCrory quite early. I did nets, I think I was 15 or 16. I was still in 5th year because the actual keeper, or should have been the keeper, was a complete rocket and wouldn't turn up for training or matches.
Right.
So, but it was a good experience, and then I ended up getting down minor trials kind of because of that. So without him messing about and me being in the right place at the right time, I might never have got playing for down at underage level.
Yeah. And did you ever win any? Did you ever get any close in the McCrory or any of them there sort of tournaments?
No, absolutely rubbish. I think I can always remember in the Brock Cup you play when you're 4th year.
Yeah.
We played St. Pius Marnfeld in a quarter-final up in like Washington Bay. You know that club that's beside the Latnay in Tyrone?
Yeah.
I saved a penalty the last kick of the game, and we won by a point. And the whole place was going mad in the change rooms. And John Rafferty came and goes, "You absolute bunch of losers, celebrating getting to the quarter final." And it always sticks in my head. It was probably the furthest we ever got. Like,
Yeah.
You just missed the Hogan and McCrory double. Then you were a year or two off that, were you?
thanks for reminding me. Yeah, I left the Abbey the year before, but like, to be honest, it wasn't for lack of trying. Like, Jody, I never met. Jody wasn't in the school when I was there, and he brought in something that. But like, we're very lucky that we had Roy Gillen, who was from our club, involved in that team. So at least somebody in the club has a Hogan medal.
Yeah, well, I was actually talking to Pod earlier about it. I couldn't remember if you were on it or not, but I can remember obviously Kevin Anderson, or sorry, Kevin McCartan. He was big player in that minor team of yours, and
See, Kevin was a strange one because he played full back in our first championship game against Tyrone down in Oma, where we won the last kick of the game. And he, whatever happened, he maybe had injury, I don't know, but a really bad back injury, and he couldn't train. I mean, couldn't jog for the rest of the campaign. But just through rehab, by the time All Ireland came around, he was with enough pain relief. He could, he could play 20 minutes or something, and he came on as a sub, and we all went. When we won the All Ireland, we went clean bananas, nightclubs and hotels and stuff. He didn't drink, because he said he was gonna. He was the captain of the Abbey McCrory team, and he was gonna take him forward. And I always just kind of remember that was the commitment he took, and I didn't do it, but he did. And he obviously got well rewarded for it, even through his whole career. Like, the might he's won at other levels. Like,
yeah, Colin Burney, he was on that down minor team as well, was he?
yeah,
He was he was on the cusp of it. He was, just he would he wouldn't be about 16 then, was he?
Yeah, he was like, those of you who know Burney, he's a really lovely guy, but he's an absolute weapon of a fella. Like,
Yeah, I remember hearing stories. Yeah,
like, I can't even remember. I'm pretty certain he was on the panel, but he was nowhere near the team. But I remember very soon after, just he proved, because he has no fear of anybody at that stage. He ended up being a very good option for down seniors, because at cornerback there weren't too many people. Nobody really naturally likes playing a cornerback. If you're from down, you want to play up in expansive football. You want to be chasing somebody around a corner all day. Like,
Mickey, see, whenever you're going to the down trials, did you sort of know you were going to get on the team, or did you just, just went, no pressure or nothing? Or did you know there was going to be someone who was going to be a big,
as an underage level, like, it was quite. There was, I think, Enrique with a really good underage time, and they had a good goalkeeper at the time, but for whatever reason, I had a good trial, maybe he didn't, but that's just like, one day things can happen. And then I played McCrory for the Abbey, and I ended up playing with down under 16s.
Right.
I never really we got loads of football. We entered Leinster competitions and stuff.
Okay.
We end up playing nearly every week, and we're playing Lees and Leashes and really hard fought games, like, and it was always way down in their places, like, so. There was no shame. Like, a lot of people, like, say your club, yourself. Like, people say, "Oh, I was from Clann, I was never getting picked." I know I went to the Abbey, but the Abbey weren't. The Abbey didn't have a big influence in down there. The Ross and Coleman's men, like Mickey Doyle and Daggy Musson, there was no Abbey teachers or past pupils involved in selection teams. I always find them fair, but like, everyone has their own story. Like, but it's quite nerve-wracking at the time. Like,
the number 2 in that down minor team, was it Gavin Joyce?
That's right, from Ballymorton.
He was a great keeper as well.
Brilliant keeper. Like, there was no.
He played for New York actually in the Connacht Championship too for a couple of years as well.
Yeah, he played in the 21 team. He's been beating the All-Ireland final as well. He was a year younger than me, so he played.
Yeah.
But he like, there was like I played the year before. If he just went merits, he probably should have started. Like, he was an unbelievable shot stopper. His kickouts were class. And he actually started the last challenge game before first round against Tyrone. And I remember Marty Clark said to me in the fight one, "What's going on? start. Like, as well, obviously not.
Doesn't look like it.
But it ended up I got in anyway. I never really looked back. But he came on for me as a sub when we were hammering Offaly in the semi-final, and he also came on in the All-Ireland final in the last 2 months to get
Mhm.
run. That's how much they thought of him.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, really, really good goalkeeper. Like.
So who actually was the management team? You had Mark Turley from Glen. That was the manager.
Mark Turley, hands the size of shovels, like big quiet gentleman. James Colgan was like player manager. You know, he was well like matured beyond his years of that. We had the famous duo of Marty McGarry and Desi, or Mario and Luigi, we used to call them.
Dazzy Candy.
That's what we used to call you.
Uh-huh.
And two really good lads. And the trainer John Morgan from Dundrum.
Oh yes, yeah.
So John's training, like we played through. I can't remember. Knew the way the southern schools couldn't. They're not allowed to play through certain months.
That's
We
right.
had
Yeah.
a 6 week break between the first round and that, and all we did was run in Dundrum sound dunes and up steps. And I, to this day, I won't go back to Dundrum because it gives me something bad.
But yeah, that I actually have this written down. So just on to the 2005 campaign. Like, so the very first game was against Tyrone, a very fancy Tyrone in Oma. And I remember being at that game, and like, I remember James Colgan scoring the winner.
Yeah.
To beat Tyrone that day, and like they would have had the likes of Colin Cavan and all playing that day. I think he was still a minor then.
They won the All Ireland the year before, and a lot of that Spain in the team was kind of still there. But we had Packy Downey, and can't really remember how Packy got took off. He's injured, playing a miraculous recovery towards the end. But usually Colin wouldn't have been in that position. But Colin, like, he wouldn't be a player that would have just like went off and tried to shoot from everywhere. He must have just absolutely believed he was going to score. But it's funny because they got a free kick about 30 seconds before. Sorry, the two scored for it. They kicked my ball away. You know, when I try to keep it inside the net to try and catch up with a quick kick out. And this next time I put it inside the net, McCann kind of picked that up, and they scored a free. And I can't remember who it was. One of them reprobates from Tyrone screaming in my face like, "Yeah!" So I just threw it down and kicked it across. I didn't even put it in the kicking tee. They weren't outside the 21. Just whacked it. I could see somebody was free. It was John McCrory or somebody was free. And I went up the other end, and I could not wait to find that boy as soon as the final whistle went.
But then you just went on, and it was 2 games against Cavan. So there was first the drawn game, and then the second game. I remember the game in Crosswood Glen, and I actually have written down here too. Killian Sheridan actually scored a goal that day. Who was actually he's now a professional soccer player, played for Celtic and stuff too. He played that day, but I remember that game in Crosswood Glen. That was a tough game that day too.
Yeah, they were 2 unbelievably tough games. Ciarán Mackey, who's just retired last year from Cavan, they were an unbelievable team. Like, you know, they was. I'd say if they had beat us, they probably would have won the All Ireland easily. Like Sheridan had all the frees off the ground, and he had one of those weird styles where he almost like was in slow motion when he kicked it, but it went about 40 meters in the air and just dropped over the crossbar. But a dirty team too, like, you know, not without the rules of the game. But I remember going for high ball and got absolutely emptied. I mean, fully punched in the face and elbowed and stamped on. And old Sean O'Neill was behind me because his son Ryan was on the panel. He went clean mad, and that's very unlike him, you know, to lose his temper. But it was a great game. Like.
No, and then in the Ulster final, it actually was played at Croke Park too against Armagh, and not only for like Down played well that day, but they missed a penalty. Kevin Duffin missed a penalty near the end of the game.
Yeah, like Johnny McKeever, he was involved in Jordanstown teams. He was a nice fella. It was a good save, to be honest. And Kevin had the cojones to hit a penalty in Croke Park Ulster final there. Like, you know, 17 or 18. That's a big ask, but he didn't hit it badly. You know, he put it in the corner. Now, if you had told me anybody in that team has to hit a penalty, I would have picked Kevin. Like, to be honest, you know,
he was always very good at place balls and everything.
Yeah, it's one
down through the years.
Yeah.
What was it like playing in Croke Park for the first time? And imagine that was your first time.
No, the year
No.
before we got the Ulster final as well against Tyrone. They beat it. We drew. They actually got a free kick for nothing in the last kick of the game, equalised. And the first time it was you run out and you can hear the noise, of the
Yeah.
sound systems, and you just look around and go, "What am I doing here?" Like,
Yeah, crazy.
the good thing is the warm ups for the goalkeepers are that kind of intense and quick. You don't really have time to think.
You're
As
in the
soon as you
zone.
hit a couple of kickouts, you kind of forget about it. But it's an amazing place to be. Like,
And then obviously there was the back door then, so you just went through, beat Galway in the quarter final. I think that was in Ciarán and Shannon in
Yeah.
Leitrim.
Yeah.
And then on to beat Offaly in the semi final. And just you said before the show, actually, you hammered Offaly in the semi final, did you?
I absolutely destroyed them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not quite sure how they ended up. The boy Ken Casey was really good, and he got a lot. But just one of them games where we get off their flyer and their heads just go out. To be honest with you, we played them in a challenge game earlier in the summer, and we absolutely annihilated them and maybe gave them like 30 points. And before the game, one of our selectors had told Gavin, if we're 4-0 up, we're going to put you on. Like, you imagine saying that in our semi-final,
Yeah.
so you must have had a right idea that they were quite fair.
And then on to the final. What was it? What was the lead up to the final like, Michael?
Things you probably don't appreciate as much of the time, but I think I did take it all in. Luckily, being from Banbridge, to a certain degree, it's not in your face. Or like if I lived in a wee village or lived in the Point or wherever, and I met people all the day, the more talking about it, the more nervous you would have been.
Yeah.
But I rarely, between a wee part-time job in Tesco and training, I never really talked to anybody, so it was kind of nice. But I always trained up in like Ballyholland, I think, before the final, and we invite people, to come into the see the players train as like an open train session. But
Yeah.
the people there kind of sort of brought it home to me. But the best, one of the brilliant experiences was getting a guard escort from the Carrickdale right to Crook Park.
Yeah.
I think there was 4 or 5 bikes and land, like, jeeps and cars, like the whole way down. It's kind of
For a fella at 17 or 18, that just must be an amazing feeling, to get that.
It's on it. But I remember we were quite driven, like, because I remember somebody who wasn't starting said to me, if we even get beat today, it's been brilliant just to have that. And I was like, what sort of loser are you? Like, we're here to win.
Yeah.
I remember that sort of was our attitude. But yeah, it is something just as when you come in down Jones's Road and all the fans are there, and it's all on final day, so people are there all day as early as they can to make the most of it, because it's an expensive day out. And just the noise, especially in the second half of the final, where like people kind of let down, and Tyrone were playing in the final after us at senior level, and in fairness, they cheered for us. Like, there was a massive down convention at the game too, if I remember, like all down.
Yeah, it was my first ever All Ireland final, so you remember it so vividly that well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting up in the Hogan just right beside the Hill 16, and just it was crazy. You were thinking, you got a real pride from a junior Clann the Banna Man helped down winning All Ireland. It was brilliant. Like,
people would maybe know us. Like, our club at that stage was known as like Clann the Banna, Banbridge. Who are they? Like, that sort of way.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of
sort of going program, and they were going, who's that there? Where's that there?
That's exactly right. Like, and it seemed the amount of people would have stopped me after, like, and they were being genuinely nice. Who's your Clann the Banna? Like,
yeah.
But
crazy.
I remember one after the game at the hotel. So, like, what Mickey's like. If you told Mickey you'd won £1 million, Mickey would go, very good, son. Mickey won a tenner, very good, son. Like, he didn't get too animated, but he was kind of emotional when I came off the bus when I met him, like, with happiness. And I was like, geez, we must have done something really big.
But here, Mayo had some team that day. Like, I was looking through the team sheets of the down one. Like, Mayo had Pierce Hanley, who's like most appearances by any Aussie Roots player down there. Like he's had a great career down there. Like you had Jamie O'Shea, who's only after retiring. You had Jared Cavergy, who was a brilliant defender for Mayo for years. You had Tom Cadiff, and you had Chris Bard, who's only after retiring as well. He was great. And then Stephen Rochford was actually one of the selectors, who was manager and now Donegal selector. Like they had some team. Like the one defining moment I remember from it was Paul McCummsky goal. He tried to fist it over the bar, and the keeper put into the net. That just sat down up. Mayo were never forgetting back after that. There.
Well, like that actually set up. I think it's an All-Ireland final record. If you're ever in a pub quiz, it's the only All-Ireland final where 4 goalkeepers played, because I got took off in the last minute, left Gavin Joyce, and when that boy, I think his name's James Mallon, he tried to put it over the bar. The big screens were there. I think it's when they introduced the big screens and the replay was there, and he sort of said that he'd hurt the back of his head, but when you saw the slow motion, I looked up and goes, didn't hit your head. Like,
it's just the embarrassment of what he done. Really, he just sort of. Yeah, no, but like that was some down team. Like you had yourself in nets, you had Gary McGee corner back, you had Conor Garvey, who went on to play a whole lot of football for down seniors. You had Hugh McGee in the odd corner. You had Eamon McConville, you had Kevin Duffin, centre half back from Castlewell, who went on to play a lot of games for down. You had Jared McCartan too from Bourne, who went on to play a lot. You had big James Colgan in the middle. Big Peter Fitzpatrick ended up playing All Ireland in 2010, All Ireland final. You had Declan Lavery, you had obviously Marty Clark. You know all the things he's done. At left half forward, you'd Shamey Grant, and then you'd Ciarán Brannigan in the corner, who on his day was very, very good. He stopped playing football far too early for me. You had Ryan Kelly, who was hampered by injuries all through his career, but a very good player from Longstone. And you had Paul McCummsky, obviously, in the other corner, who played in the All-Ireland final too. And plus you had like Kevin McKiernan coming off the bench. You had Colin Murney, and then you had the 2 local lads too as well. You had Kevin Anderson, who was with Derg at the time, and then you had McConville from Monaclone. So like that was some down team, like
great squad.
Yeah, like it was a very, very strong team. Like, you know, when you look back at it, and look, you know, we came out playing senior football probably in recession times, and some of them boys were tradesmen and end up, you know, going to England or Scotland or wherever. Some emigrated to Australia, but like you'd be hard pushed to find. You know, like a lot of them players were always their key men for their clubs.
Yeah.
You know,
One thing I noticed about that there, whenever me and Brad were minor managers, like you go to some teams, like say there, and say you're going up to Addy Hall, sometimes they would have big players, but say you're going to, say, Glastonbury or Ballymorton, they would only have one big player. Like years ago, like then, whenever you were minors, like imagine going and playing unranked, and big James Colgan and Marty Clark coming out to play. Like, can you imagine bringing lads down to play that team? That would be like crazy. Like, or even I think there's a couple of Mayo Bridge contingent out there in their Strava. Like they were big stopping lads. Like at the age of 17, 18, you sort of don't see that anymore now.
Well, like I'm kind of out of touch with the whole underage with matches because they're on at the same time as our senior training.
Yeah.
But any that I do get to see, you can sort of look around and go, right, well, there's 2, like, and one's a lot better than the other, but there's 2 quite strong players that you can see. But if you went up down Rake, like, I remember number 60, like even they maybe had 6 players, not down number 16, and only Peter Walsh was a selector and probably didn't want to put all his own club players on the same team with, you know, out of being a gentleman. He could have, and nobody could have questioned it because they were all really good players. Like,
yeah, well, there was plenty of big men in around the middle to win the ball, but then you had like your Paul McCummsky and Brannigan all up in the forward line who were so small, like a lot of the defenders didn't know how to handle them. Or
so those 2 are just even their pace and their size and their stature and their skills. They can score from anywhere. But the Conor Garvey, not a white. A lot of people would have said, "Oh, Conor Garvey he was full back." The stuff he did, like just, and he never talked about it. You just see standing in front of you. Like I very rare. I think I had to save 2 shots in the whole campaign. It was mostly tickets, and I was against Galway where I had those, and they had, I think it was it Meehan or one of those boys playing. So he's hard to mark, like. But we had a very good defense as well. Like, you know, Hugh and Gary McGee were very, very steady cornerbacks. Like, I was surprised that they didn't really go on to, progress up, because Down maybe would have lacked cornerbacks in that
Yeah.
time in the mid-noughties.
Mhm.
Do you think Down sort of, should have really pushed on? Like you think of that there, some of the players that were in Mayo and played all them All Ireland finals, like Down, people would say it was a fluke they got in 2010. You know what I mean? But if you think about it, like some of them players weren't like big James Colgan. You would have thought when it went on the big massive things, but just I suppose injuries and stuff sort of hampered him. Then obviously Marty Clark went away to Australia.
Mhm.
But like Down should have, you'd think Down should have really done more with that All Ireland winning team.
Yeah, I think so. The under 21, like we won the Ulster under 21 champion in 2008, and the boys won in 2009 again, and they got the All Ireland final. We were beat by Kildare in the All Ireland semi final. They got beat by Cork in the final. There's I think 4, 5 All Ireland semi finals, 2 All Ireland finals, and 2 Ulster championships, and in one sort of generation of 3 years. And then 2010 happened. And if you look at, I don't think 2010 had an overly huge amount of them players. It was more the sort of 99 minor team coming
Yeah.
really strong in their career, which maybe you nearly had 2 generations of players too close together. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, because I always thought, I was thinking last night, I was like, well, that minor team, the seniors never really went on and challenged as they should have. And then, like when Ciarán says, a lot of people said 2010 was a fluke, but they're like, even you pointed out there wasn't too many who like went through on to play for seniors. Where I was always be of the opinion, if you're good enough at minor and you win it, like you just want to naturally progress up to the seniors. But why do you think it just didn't happen for certain ones? Or
I think from, to say James's problem, no problem. He was that good. Everybody wanted to play for him, so he's playing Sigerson his first year. I actually think he did centre half back the down in 21s in their all Ireland final 2005.
Aye.
He definitely played some part, and he played for us in the same year. And then he was called into the senior panel in 2006, I think it was. They played Sligo away. Like, I don't think he started, but he was involved.
That's
He
right.
got to,
That was Paddy O'Rourke's year. That's the
yeah,
time they got beat.
was a lot. That's a lot to. And James is like completely different from me. Like, I'm quite sort of laid back, roller punches, and like, he's very driven and intense, and he's very methodical, and he probably needed a break for his own mindset, because he's just played so much football, like, and then he took his break, and then he kind of found it hard to get back into loving it again. I think, when you
Yeah.
can experience being able to go to a concert, or you can go on holidays, or you can go to a stag do that you've never
Yeah.
done before. You're like, there's a
Yeah.
whole world out here that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause James, he went away traveling as well, didn't he?
I think he went to New Zealand and stuff. Injuries were big. Like, Paul McComiskey suffered so bad.
Yeah.
Injuries. Kieran Brannigan injuries. Um, like Pete Fitz went to Australia but came back. He had a decent career. Like Conor Gallery would suffer badly with injuries. There was a lot of injuries. Now, we had no strength and conditioning plan in place for until we got to senior level. Right now the development squads all have bits and pieces. Well, not bits and pieces, probably a whole. If you're a Tyrone strength and conditioning coach, you take from the bottom to the top. Where we just sort of went in, and at that stage it was kind of uncertified. Like, anybody could call themselves a strength and conditioning coach, if you know what I mean. There was
Yeah.
no qualification you needed.
You went to the gym, you were S&C.
Maybe a lot of that led to injuries, because we weren't being conditioned properly. Because you notice now, like, if you look at that 2008 or 2005 minor team, and you put us in tight jerseys against this year's under 17 or under 20s, they're just more athletically developed than we are. Like,
Yeah.
were, and their bodies will be able to withstand a lot more because they're conditioned for it.
Like ourselves.
But like ourselves, full of insulation, but.
But here, Mickey, then on to your Down senior career, what do you make of it, or what do you have anything more of Down here? You played in a Division 4 final against Tipperary. in 2009. Division 3, sorry, Division 3 final. And you were on the cusp in like 2011, 2012. And that was really as much, was it? I'm not sure with the dates or the years.
I was 2008 was the first full year I was on the squad.
Was that with DJ and
DJ and Ross? We beat Tyrone at home and we ended up. We beat Laois away and we ended up getting beat by Wexford. I think it was kind of came to a bad end, but I did sub the whole year and I actually had won a Ciarán on the 21 that year. So I played one game against Leitrim and I played the Ulster final the day before, and I had said I said to the physio like my sciatic nerve was killing me from kickouts from I played for the university, and so you're just going to take your chance, and I would have got away with no blame. We were beat by Leitrim, only they pumped a high ball in between me and one other, and there was no full back because he had got caught out of a position but trying to mark somebody else's man. Went into the back of the net, and I never really got another go at it, and deservedly so because Brandy played so well. In 2009, I pushed him as hard as I felt I could. I only ended up playing that league final. We got to the ground, and there's nowhere in Longford. There's nowhere to Pierce Park. There's nowhere to do a warm up, and we're kind of getting ready to go out on the pitch. But Brandy went out into the car park and started running around with the goalkeeper coach. What's going on here? And the goalkeeper coach, no, like you're doing yourself deserves the team deserves, or you do Mickey, just tell us. And he goes, no, I can't play. I said, playing a National League final live on TV now, 2 minutes notice, brilliant.
Yeah.
But I think he kept a clean sheet. And I played okay. There was a lot of high balls that I dealt with well for a change. But I can remember catching one and I went to just past the corner of the other. But then when someone's looking at you and they looked away, he looked away just as I hit it, and they got it and scored a point. There was loads of points went after that, but we got beat by a point, and I got absolutely hammered on all those keyboard warriors and GA boards and stuff. But then 2010, I was on the panel for the pre-season and got dropped on my birthday, but I deserved to be dropped. I was playing atrociously bad with Jordan's time. I couldn't have any qualms, and then I was given a chance to come back and start training again. But I felt like I needed to give the club, you know, a full season, and Tony Wilson had been quite clear that, you know, and I don't regret it, like, because I got player of the year in 2010 for the club. Watching the All-Ireland final from the stand is one of the hardest things you ever do, like, but I don't regret it because it made me a better goalkeeper. In 2011, I got in because Defi Alder had to move to Manchester. So, but I didn't end up playing any games. In 2012, I played a few games, and then started to get forced out of my position on the bench towards the end of the championship. It was a big by Mayo. So after that, I called it a day, and I moved to England to start working because at that stage during the recession, or a career in general, like, some people are different. I kind of felt that all I did was sit and think about football all day and work, and work was kind of a distraction, you know. So I had to do something, and I wasn't even mentally strong enough for probably senior county football like you need to be, you know. I know psychologists now can make you better, but for being honest, I probably got as much as I should have got out of it.
No, it's tough though as well for people when you're on those panels and you're doing all the training, and then when you know you're not sort of getting football, it's hard to keep yourself motivated and going. Like it's a full time commitment.
I think you're right, Ciarán. Like, now I think when you put it like that, a lot of your confidence goes because even subconsciously you're playing and training just as hard as that other person, but you have nothing to show for it. And you have people in your own club, rightly so, going, "You're not playing for them. Why are you not playing for us? Because I'm starred. Just play anyway." Well, if I play and I'm starred, then you won't get the points, so it makes no difference.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard that people put pressuring you from other, you know, to play for your club and how much you've missed. And if you had you for that game, and well, what do you want me to do? Say no to playing for Down? You know, I'm not going to do that. Like,
yeah, I know it's so hard when you've got the whole club and county thing, but it's even tough when you think of those big clubs, how successful they still are, you know, like your Mayo Bridges and Burns, when they've got so many players out as well, they just have, it's nearly like the people at their club are like the subs for the county, you know, when they keep being kept
Yeah,
in the team. And
you're 100% right. Like, there's a lot of them, unless it's, see if it's the league game, right? And say at that stage, like Mayo Bridge are playing Leitrim, and Mayo Bridge are missing Danny Coulter and Ronan Sexton. Say they probably have two strong enough players who can get them through that game. Where nobody's going to try and go Danny, we're raging with drop points. So they probably have enough still to beat teams comfortably.
yeah,
Well, that Mayo Bridge team of that era, like. So it's hard when like you're kind of the focal point of your club in terms of, as a Clann man, a goalkeeper, you're very, very busy all the time.
yeah, yeah. Whereas
Especially the past few years.
those are bigger clubs, because they maybe have county players in succession for so many years, they're nearly used to it. Whereas, like, see, if we got a county player, you'd be like, it would be such a shock. And like you say, you as goalkeeper, then like you're maybe maybe we're testing midfielders out, young lads, just to try and see what would work.
No,
Even whenever Liam Devlin was out, like we found it hard too,
yeah,
with just start games and all. Like it just like Liam got a bit of a run in the team with Paddy Tally and was starting him into the field, and then we were losing him for games, and he was such a vital part of our midfield. We were finding that hard. Like whereas Brad says, like if Mayo Bridge or anybody went out of that Kilcrew team, like someone just slots in straight away there.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And is just as good as that person there.
I think I think it's a bit more organized now in terms of there's a lot more joined up thinking between maybe the county fixture committee. Managers have a bit more cop on, like, but you will still find managers that will probably pressurize their players into not playing for county, or to make them attend to things, especially at underage level. I've heard a few of that, and I'd be shocked at that because, like, what is the point? Like, it's scientific. Like, why would NFL teams, why do Premiership teams have a day off during the week? Why do rugby teams have, you only, like, you see like Rory Best used to sit out a game. That's just the sports science says he has to be excluded because of risk of injury, and then you wonder why players retire in their early 20s, or they have torn hamstrings off the bone. Like, it's because of overtraining.
Yeah, it's mad.
But Becky, I'll just go back just after talking about your down career, and we'll go back to then at university.
Yeah.
In 2008, you won a Sigerson title, All Ireland title, with Jordanstown, and I was just looking back at the team, and I couldn't get over how good the team was. Like, I mean, Jordanstown must have been throwing money like serious that year or something, or you know what to do.
Money doesn't pass on to GA.
But like you had the likes of yourself and that. You had Charlie Harrison in cornerback from Sligo. Like he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. You had McCall fullback. You had Morgan the other cornerback. You had McGuigan right half. You had Cure Lacey. Like Cure Lacey is like one of the best players ever to play, playing centre half back. And then you had Peter Donnelly, who actually ended up converting to a goalkeeper later in his career, and he's a strength and conditioning coach now. And you had McKenna in the middle. You had Collie Kavanagh from Tyrone in the middle. You had Darren Hughes from Monaghan, right half forward. You had Tomas McCann from Antrim, who's been one of their Antrim's standout players for the past 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
You had Raymond Mulgrew from Tyrone, who was a brilliant player. And then you had Paddy Cunningham. Like, Paddy Cunningham was brilliant. He actually scored 1-9 in the final. And you had big Mark Lynch from Derry, who was an absolute animal of a player playing full forward. And then you name the other corner forward, you're going like former footballer of the year, Andy Moran from Mayo. Like, that was some team.
Yeah.
Like you must have been just like, I'm starstruck even sort of, reading that, someone who's such a Gaelic lover. Like, that is such a team there. And like you beat the George. He's only beat the George after extra time. Like they had a good team too. They had Aidan O'Mahony, the Kerry player, playing for them as well.
I think Dennis Glennon was doing centre half back for them. Like if you look at their team, a lot of them played intercounty football for long, and a lot of them were established intercounty players.
Yeah.
At that stage, like I was quite lucky because Michael Cusson, the big lad from Cork, he's like 6'7".
Yeah.
Injured and didn't make the final. Like if they put him in full forward, I'm not quite sure who would have been able to handle him because he's just so.
Man,
Mike. Get around so much like mom's a foot taller than you.
Yeah.
No, but we got beaten in the Sigerson final the year before I was doing that in 2007 up at Queens, by Queens in extra time. And I kind of, in normal time, I think it was, I got a free kick and I had it off the deck because there was no options out of my hands. I didn't know it was lumped, so just trying to hit it like a kick out. And it was purring up there and I didn't connect that well. It went for the 45, but it broke, I think, James McGovern or somebody just swung it over. And I kind of got blamed for that, which is fair enough. Like, football is football. Like, and I think only one person said it in the face, and a few were about to say it, and then they realised that a couple of games before I kind of kept them in it. And the next year I said to myself, like, there's 2 or 3 boys like Johnny Bradley that I can't go back and give them a Sigerson medal and Rory Murray, but I owe the boys who can play was to do something. I stopped. I didn't drink at all. I moved home from my parents, traveled up to university every day. We were lucky enough to be part of like the Sinai, it's called, the Sports Institute, strength and conditioning. I really threw myself into that. And you know what? Like it kind of worked. And you'd say, like, look at that starstruck team. But to be honest, them boys, a lot of them were tired with pre-seasons, with say McKenna Cups or National League games. You're actually being the standout player because they're tired. If you think about it, if we were playing Carlow too, Carlow had no players playing any football other than that football. They're quite fresh. Where you had the likes of Andy driving back to Mayo to play National League games on Sunday, you were absolutely wrecked.
Yeah.
But the thing that's striking about that team is so many gentlemen, so like modest and just down to earth and humble. Like Andy Moran, from the first time I met him, was just a gentleman. Now he does say what's on his mind, but there's nothing he thinks that he won't say to you. Because he actually introduced us to the GA board. He goes, "These boys give each other a lot of grief from that GA board." I'm like, "What's a GA board?"
Uh-huh.
I ended up looking at it, it was the worst thing I ever did. We actually got played. I remember saying McAlister's played against Tyrone in the McKenna Cup and against Leitrim, and both times been disastrous. Like, Decky Alder played against Tyrone. But he, like, Carl Lacey, like, Carl is the best footballer I ever played with, and a down to earth fella. He's very funny too. Like, they were quite big into nutrition, and we had a nutritionist, and they had, I think, what do you call that? There's the Great Northern that Brian McAlister owns up in Donegal.
That's right, yeah.
Had this like pasta and chicken and some sort of tomato based sauce. And he's like, called the waiter over, give me a fry. And he had a whole fry while watching, and then he watched the wee personal DVD player, not talking or listening to the football the whole way, and then came out and just basically won a match by himself. He's just, I know he was very professional with Donegal, but like Mark Lynch played for Derry for probably, I don't know how long. It felt like decades. Absolute gentleman, really down to earth, would treat you like the people, and you would always tell the people they hang about with weren't footballers, when like just their friends, it's not like a clique, but to train with that, when you look back, to train with that 3 times a week and be in that presence, the amount it brought you on was unreal.
It'd have been tough too, trying to face doing even goalkeeping training against them lads too, trying to.
It made, like, I can remember I used to be really angry if I conceded a goal, because Mickey Moran's training was so football based, it was unreal. I was involved all the time. The end of every drill would usually have some sort of goal. We used to actually do drills where there's 2 nets. You had to defend 2 goals. And I can remember at the end of the training session, I'm like, yeah, I'm wrecked. Like, I can't. How do you? Like, well, like, you conceded 1 goal and 2 goals. Or imagine what you'd be like when you have 1 net to cover. Like, what? It was the best footballing year in terms of what you learn off other people. Like,
You had Adrian McGuckin and Mickey Moore there.
Yeah.
Both two, what was it like having them as your manager? Like Mickey Moore now, like Kilcoo will tell you, he's brought them on leaps and bounds. He's just a legend of GAA, and look what he done with Slot Neil and everything.
Yeah, like Mickey's, no disrespect. He, like, from coaching point of view, I loved every single session that I ever went to, and he always knew the right thing to say to you to get the most out of you. He could read your body language, whether you're a bit tired or you're a bit hyped up, or that sort of way. Like I'd say, I can remember like the likes of I think Paddy Cunningham and Kevin Anderson after every session would write down what he'd done because they were getting involved with their own like teaching careers doing PGCs where they'll have to be involved coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really overstate. He took us from freshers as well, so probably had 2 or 3 years now. Adrian came in as manager uh, solo, I think 2007. Well, not so they worked together, but the strange thing is like the team nearly picked itself. And Adrian was a very good man in terms of he's very thorough. Like, he'd have PowerPoints. This is like when PowerPoints weren't really a thing. And we
It was
use
big
it
back
and
then.
he would have all the players that we were playing against up on a PowerPoint and left footed, right footed, doesn't like this, doesn't like that, very, very thorough. Now, like towards the end, I think 2009 I didn't play because I was on replacement year and I wanted to try and get him down. So I want to play an Air Mechanic Cup team. 2010, as I was saying, I played really bad for a few games. I think just burnt out. No one intended to play bad, and he dropped me. And he wasn't very like arm around the shoulder when he did it, considering I'd played in two Sigerson finals for him. I thought, but in hindsight, he was completely right. Like, and I did say, like, I did reach out to him. I seen him down at the Kilmacud Sevens and said hello to him. Like, but you live and you learn. But he was very big man to, from a mindset point of view. He would be big into positivity and taking every negative and making it into a good thing. You can do whatever you believe you can do, which is some
Motivator.
people think that might be stupid, but it's very, very important when you're young and you have a lot of pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey, any good stories or any good after parties of the Sigerson? All I can picture now in my head is Andy Moore and Mark Lynch and the boys bopping about in the middle of Thompson's or something with the Sigerson Cup, or even the bot. Them boys probably been bot boys.
I'm going to really let you down here. I actually didn't drink the night we won the Sigerson because we were playing on a club the next day.
So worth it.
It was worth it. We beat them.
uh,
But that game was down in Carlow because they took the DRA. The guards in the court had went to DRA, and it was a Thursday night at 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night. The time the extra time was over, we were on the bus from Carlow. It was nearly 11:30 midnight. Like, you wouldn't have got to Belfast at 2 or 3 in the morning.
yeah.
I played that game, but to be honest, there was far more nights out. Like, I can say it now, we're never going to play for Down again, but we played my first game on the bench for Down was against the championship, or the back door on the road was down in Offaly. We were staying in a place in Johnstown which had like chalets, and Leeds United were doing the pre-season at it, and Steve Staunton was the manager. And they promised us, because we trained so hard before this qualifier, if we won well, because there was like 2 weeks before the next game, or maybe we can't remember, but they would let us have a few pints together. And then after we won, they took us in and reneged on it. We had a players meeting, and some of the goody two shoes basically said, no, we agree with management, let's not do it. So we all went back to our chalets, and I went into bed. And about an hour later, Brendan Clay comes in, here kid, you coming for a pint? And I was like, I'm too scared, Brandy, of getting caught, to be honest with you. That's all right, son, sure. If I get chips, I'll bring you some back. So 2 minutes later, Jack Lynch goes, get the out of bed, now you're coming with us. we go around, and there's this wee local pub, and there's a wedding going on, and I was like, try and get across the wedding, aren't they? So they wouldn't let us in, but we got into the bar, we had a few pints, and the girls just like, do you want to go into the nightclub? And I was like, nightclub here. And your mum, Brandy, goes, she's talking, there's no nightclub here. So we're in the corner, and it's the biggest nightclub I've ever seen in my life. In the middle of rural Ireland. One of them 2FM DJs was playing, absolutely raking it. So, absolutely, had a good few drinks, sneaked back into the hotel, climbed over the fence, got chased by a security guard, slept in for the breakfast and the meeting in the swimming pool, but just said that I wasn't feeling well. And then the next week, the boys felt bad about not letting us drink that night. So after the Leash game, because we were very good wins, like, you should go out for a few pints. And I know he said it. I said, I'm not going out, because he says you have to be home by 11 o'clock and you're only allowed one pint. And I said, I know what it's going to be. And he goes, right, let's, well, you stay here. And then he went anyway. And then 11:30 came DJ come to the door. And I was in the boxers, like, dark room, half asleep. You sleeping? I said, I was wrecked. Where's Brandy? And I said, put a few pillows in the bed. He says, I sleep. So came out anyway. And then for 2 hours later, Brandy's caught going through security. The security guard, he tells DJ, and he's banging the door in my room. And I said, I don't know where he's gone. He must have sneaked out. And then he appears in my room and goes, Kid, I got you chicken nuggets and curry sauce, but I ate them. And then the next day, all the boys that were caught in CCTV were lined up outside the swimming pool and ceremoniously dropped or barked at, and it was emotional. But then we got hammered by Wexford a few weeks later. It didn't really work out that way.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But then, Mickey, that's the county careers in the university. Just on to Clann Banna career then.
I think my first game was 2002. Playing seniors, I think I was 15. There was no goalkeeper, so I ended up playing. I think that was Division 4.
You were 15 then, whenever you made your debut.
But
back in the old days.
When the cotton jerseys.
Back when football was football.
They were not pretty.
And Jamie's was always the sponsor.
Jamie's, yeah, that was right. But yeah, then I sort of just 2004 and 5, because we got the All-Ireland semi-final and All-Ireland final, played very little football, and we were lucky. Like, we had Collie Gribbon and Java, like, good goalkeepers, and there's no real push for me to there was no really nobody saying, oh, he better be playing, because they had good goalkeepers, like.
Yeah.
And then 2006 started playing, and it wasn't that good. And then Tony came in, Tony Wilson, and kind of like, I need a good kick up the backside, and he gave me a good kick up the backside, and from there, like, those Division 2 seasons were probably the best football. Like, they were so competitive, like, you think the teams were playing like Longstone and Bransford, like, and we beat Bransford, and we beat Longstone, and we beat Warrenpoint, and like, and we weren't beating them by a fluke. Like, do you remember the amount of games we used to have against Downpatrick? Like, real titanic struggles, and that Downpatrick team was a good team, like.
Yeah.
But then we got into, like, Division 1 was always our goal. Like, I can remember Division 1, we got there, played senior championship, and we could beat. I remember Kilcoo had set a target of 10 goals against us, and scored 9 in the first half. And they were all walk-ins, like, they weren't pot shots, they just walked the ball into the net. We had 16 players, and the 16 was a goalkeeper.
Scored till like midway through the second half that day either, sure we didn't.
No, and then they had to do punishment runs at the end because they conceded a goal against us, or we scored against them. Like, it just shows you what you think would have been the best pinnacle of your career. It was the worst season of your career, and it was. And then me traveling to England a lot with work, I would have missed a lot of training around then. You kind of feel, you don't feel part of it, like, you turn up and at some stages, like, and we didn't have as many goalkeeping options as we have now. We have loads of goalkeeping options, like any of the 3 keepers in senior panel can do nets, and no one, like, we're just all the same. But at that stage, we had 1 or 2, and maybe they were very inexperienced, or very young to be playing. And you turned up and played, but even getting in Division 1 from Division 2, I wasn't training as much, and I trained on Monday nights, but I didn't feel as part of it, when you do feel kind of distance.
Yeah, because I can remember a stage where Brooker was in nets at one point, Mucker was in nets at one point.
That's right, yeah.
We just didn't have anything sort of set in stone, and it was just, see, when you sort of say about missing one player or like UA working and stuff, it has like a knock-on effect for a club like us where you're not sort of blessed with people and fighting to get into the team.
I think you've seen some teams down south. I think I read recently a Leash player, a Jewel Star, like, he flew home from London every weekend, and there's definitely club footballers. They are club games on Fridays. Like, a lot of them are on Sundays. Like Longstone, they probably would have campaigned at county board level to have Sunday games because they had so many boys working in London. Because I would have been on the same sites as they were. Like, now, you can't leave at Friday at 11 o'clock to fly home. Like, your boss wouldn't. Why should he give you a 4.5 day week versus somebody else? Like, But now, thankfully, recently, especially under Rowan McAlister, there's been a massive upsurge in the amount of players committing because numbers was always our problem. We didn't have
Yep.
enough at training. We didn't have enough, we didn't have continuity there. Whereas now I know with lockdown, people might not have a whole lot else. But even before coronavirus, it was a bit of a change, as in numbers were quite static.
Yeah, and then I
So,
think actually when it did kick in, and after the first lockdown ended, we definitely seen a surge in the sort of outer ones who you see one week, don't see the next. We got everybody together, and there was like 30 plus at every training session. It was great.
Well,
yeah,
like you
no,
would say that would be a reason why we're in three now. Like for years we were a well-established Division 2 club. Like
I think
teams hated coming to us, and
I
still
think,
continue hate coming to us
yeah, no, I think
all the time. And then we've just went down. And Division 3, we for years, I remember years ago, we found it so hard to get out of Division 3. Division 3 is such a hard division to get out of, and it's going to be even really hard this year. But we finally did, and we were well established in 2 for years. I remember some battles that we had with some teams were brilliant. Like the battles we had with Warren Point and all were like
but you remember, like
unreal.
we nearly were in Division 1 before the point beat us in the playoff.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
we had great, like we had a strong team. We had a great manager. Tony had us really well trained, and it was all kind of new to everybody. This sort of taking football seriously in terms of your training. But Tony made it enjoyable too. Like we always encouraged us to socialise together on Friday nights after games, and there was a real bond there. Like
yeah,
when I got dropped in that 2010 panel playing a lot of club, like a lot of the older boys who wouldn't really took much time with me before became very, very good friends in terms of making sure you're all right, or
yeah.
just making you feel part of the game. But I think we maybe paid the price where in the mid 2000 or late 2000s we had a really good senior team, and we thought that was enough, and we
Yeah.
could perpetual, and we didn't. There wasn't, like, we were lucky, like the Dino and Barry Nelson's generation. They had a good underage team from my memory. But if you look at our senior team now, who is the spine of that team? It's them boys. Like,
Yeah.
we're lucky that we have Mickey and Marty and Paul Burns who brought, and all the underage coaches coming through. But we do have, like, how many? I think we have 6 or 7 trainers at the minute. We're part of the under 17 team last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that.
And all 6 or 7 are very capable of playing next year, at some
Yeah.
point. Whereas
Yeah.
years ago, minors mightn't have played until they were 21. You know what I
No,
mean?
like, see, I remember, like, Gary Quinn and Aaron Nelson are a year older than me, and now there's a few games that get on because um people didn't turn up. The old Bridge off in the drink type thing, like. But it was very hard to break into the senior team until you were 20, like, or 21. It just,
Yeah.
no matter how good you were, like, you're just playing against a big, strong man, and if
Men
you did
against
get put on
boys.
the pitch, you'd end up getting cleaned.
Like, I'll just go into obviously you talked about success or Division 1, and we're talked about established. Just we were talking, slightly before, just the disappointments in Clann. Like, as I said to you before, I can remember one year Clann were hot favourites for the championship, and I remember
Yeah,
playing a championship game in Bourne against Glen, and Glen
yeah,
played us off the park that day. They were in Division 3 at the stage, and they were just starting, to start where they are now.
yeah.
Like now McCartan and all them lads would have been coming through then. I'm not sure if they would have been playing, but they'd have been on the cusp of it, and they trounced us that day in Bourne. We
No, I
thought
think
we had won before we went, sort of thing,
Mhm.
because we knew we were hot favourites for the championship.
yeah, I think even for that game, we didn't show them any respect. But see, the year before, maybe a couple of years before, I remember playing. We turned up in Drumgaff to play in the championship, and they were warming up, running across the pitch. We were there an hour and 15 minutes before the game, and we were pulling the car park, and they're like, "These boys are really taking this seriously," And then we end up walloping them, and then we played them again. I think the boys were thinking, "Sure, they tried their best last time, and look at the stadium,"
Yeah.
And then I think they played Bagnall and McCartan, who were home from Sunderland, soccer in Burnley.
Uh-huh.
And one of them scored a goal off the ground that I didn't even sniff it go past me. It went into the top joint, like,
As I
That
can
was
remember that one, there was one went to your top left roof of the net, and just there was nothing we could do about it. And
stuck in the joint, I think. But we were 8 points up against the point in Ballyhoo in a championship match, and we threw that away. We were beat by Cleef in the semi-final, and their best player to take it got injured, badly injured.
That,
And
that
we
was a
were
major blow. That was a major blow that year. I think that was 2011, but I'm not 100% sure.
You're right, because Mickey was in charge.
Yeah, and we really should have won a championship that year.
They won.
You know what I mean? For the team that we had, like the likes of Rory Hill, Johnny Burns, and all them lads. Paul Burns and all, and yourself and Nets. Rory Gillen was still young then too.
I think
Not that he's not young now, but he was younger.
we also lost that game up in St. John's as well. Remember the league final too? It was just we always got to the very, very end and just couldn't get it, just to get that cup. And
there's no
because
winning that league, we promoted in Division 2, and I couldn't understand it. Well, part of me was thinking 2003, we're beating the junior championship final. I came on as a sub in the first match, and we were beating the replay. But we didn't take that final seriously. And see, looking back, how many times we didn't get a chance to win a medal. I took it seriously, young, and I'd be nervous at doing things against management, but a lot of the older boys just, I remember one of the players, we got a bus up to that match.
That's right, St. John's, in St. John's, yeah.
We got past in his kit bag, and when we got to St. John's to tug out, it was dust all over his stuff, so we played in shorts and socks covered in Buck Boston glass.
That's Palm Bridge all over there, if you've ever heard it. I can remember that game. Kevin gave us a bottle of hockey after, and there was the famous Mickey Fairburn speech in the coach after. And then it could well have been. I can just remember Kevin getting on my 1.5 litre bottle and giving it and everybody's taking a swig of it. And Mickey, it was the famous speech in the coach after. One of my highlights of running about with the senior team.
I don't even remember that. Thank God.
But I'm sure there's some stories too with some of the seniors. Like there's a couple of Dublin trips. There was one away to Bristol too.
The Bristol one wasn't the best crack. Probably was Letterkenny when we first got promoted in Division 2. We went to Letterkenny, checked in. The hotel was lovely, too nice for us reprobates. And the boys went to Diddley D bar close to the thing and stayed there for ages. But we were all going to a nightclub at one point. Now us younger boys were like, not sitting there spending our money drinking in the pub. We're gonna have a carry out. We'll have a bit of crack, listen to tunes, and then go up the street to the nightclub. And then when we were all ready to go, when the older boys came back, and we were in level 3, and I hear fire alarms go on, and the guards were there, and went down, and one of the boys' rooms, he'd ripped the radiator off the wall and just flooded his own room. Rory Hill had attacked somebody with a fire extinguisher, and then public, and she got press charges, I think. I think the case goes on, and then we went on. I don't know if I can tell you our story actually. I can just leave it.
There's some are just you can't say it all.
No,
I can remember my first ever trip in Dublin, and it was fucking staying in an 8-room fucking
those are the
hostel, and it was some crack. You talk about. And saying the older lads, and as you say, fire extinguishers started going, you clean soaking before you go out on a night out in the town in Dublin,
Yeah, no, there's serious right. Lonnie, these were breeding out of the trailer, but they were getting good value on them trips.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, so Mickey. Oh, sorry.
Just gonna say then when we were down in Derry as well, that was sort of the last big one before we got away.
I forgot about it too. Yeah, it was good too.
Coronavirus things and all, so it was good crack because it was more so young ones in than there was older ones.
Yeah, I couldn't go. I drove up to have that really inspirational speech by that Derry player. Drove home thinking, what was that about? At least he's had a good night after it. I didn't get the chance to have a drink and forget about that waste of time.
Yeah, well, so you even take wee things like that there like granted because you don't even know when now with everything that's going on when we're going to get the chance to go and do that again. So
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, true. But Mickey, we'll just head on, and then the next part of the interview is just your top 15 players who you've either played with or played against. So we'll go with number one to start off with. It can be
So
yourself or it can be someone else.
no, I'll not put myself. It's a flip there. I spent a lot of time training with Brendan McVeigh. He was very, very good to me. Like he was kind of. It wasn't in his interest as a goalkeeper for number one spot to bring me on, but he was like he tried to make me as good as he could, and I didn't, work out. But we were down, we're blessed at that stage. Like you had like Dackie Alder, Gavin Joyce. We were all kind of my underage sort of teams and floating about, but like Brandy from sort of being in and out of the team, in and out of the panel, up from 2005, 2010, like the way he got an All Star and the way he performed, and like even though Iron final, see the save he made in the first maybe 5 minutes,
That's right,
Mhm.
yeah.
unbelievable. Now, we just what cornerback, as you said earlier, had Charlie Harrison, absolute Rolls Royce of a cornerback, and it's not because he's my mate, because he's not, because he's very good at making fun of my weight. So I'll actually tell you a story about him. He played underage rugby for Ireland, and we were training in Jordanstown, and the Anglo Ireland under 20s were there training because it was snowing outside, and they were in the indoor pitch. And I think he recognised somebody, or someone said to him, "So you played underage for Ireland?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, I did, yeah." And he says, "Why didn't you keep it up?" He's like, "I just couldn't put weight on." And I was joking, like, "Here, I'll give you some of mine." He goes, "Not that type of weight." But unbelievable cornerback, and a very good lad too. Just um, and then fullback Conor Garvey, 2005. Like Garvey would play, and no one would pass too many remarks, but all footballers would respect him. For what he does and his ability. Like, and he very rarely had a bad game.
Yeah.
The other cornerback, JP Yartland, because I'm kind of scared not to put him in the team.
JP was brilliant.
JP, you know, he was an athlete. He was definitely a special individual. Like, but we always give us. He's one of them boys, that would put his head in front of the boot, like for you.
Yeah.
And you need that, when you're under the cosh a lot in defence.
I remember one Sunday he run the Caswan Lake in 9 minutes 30, and I was sort of half training with the seniors in, trying to ship a bit of weight off, and I done it like 22 minutes, and I was sitting going like 9 minutes. But like he was near done by the time I was near even a quarter of the way around. I remember we set off in the first group, and I mean he went flying past me. He was an unbelievable athlete, like.
Unbelievable athlete, like, he scored his, he wouldn't have been afraid to go up. He would win you a lot of, he would break the line a lot, he'd get you a lot of territory.
Mhm.
Now shooting wasn't his thing, so we were quite lucky that we had forwards who wouldn't run out of your road but could shoot. So he did the hard work and they just sort of finished it off. But then
He was one tough player too. He was strong as an ox boy.
His shooting was all right one night up in Drummoness. I remember he came from the right hand side and rifled one into the top corner of the net. I think,
I think you're right, actually.
but it would have been few and far between.
It still doesn't beat the Mickey Fairburn one against
Glass.
up in our glass. Mickey straight through the middle, and I mean pure proper punt pass right up into the top corner. It's the best goal I've ever seen.
I standing. It was like a clear day in our glass by the sea, and the sun was beating down. And the other way he came in from the right, I was standing that straight, and all I goes, "That's going straight." Oh, top bag.
I actually remember Stam say Brad that day, and us going absolutely clean mad. It's like couldn't believe it, like 21 yards out, and just a pure punt pass in the top corner.
It just rose though, just perfectly into the top corner, and you're just like, that's
those wee things are the things I almost remember the most about following Clann Banna through the years too.
Yeah. People would say that's a fluke, like, but see training with Mickey, like, the shooting drills especially, like with the goals, he would have regularly that's what he would have done. He wouldn't have tried to shoot. He would try to punt pass it into a corner.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times you can read what he's doing, but if you don't know what he's going to do, it'd be hard to get there. Like.
Yeah.
But right half back of Don Hughes, that's kind of where I know he played half forward in the Sigerson final, but it's kind of where he would have been for us a lot of time with Jordanstown. Like, I think he kind of speaks for himself. Like he was a late bloomer too. Like he was sub keeper for I think his McCrory team, and he maybe for the I think
He played. That's for Monaghan, like in an Ulster final or something too, didn't
yeah
he?
they did the Judas and the sub keeper and made
That's right. Yeah.
but he class player, sound fella. You know, only get better and better. You know what I mean? Like, you know, he going from sub keeper to being captain of your county and playing for Ireland is some
turnaround.
Centre half backs, Carl Lacey, just absolute Rolls Royce of a player. Like, you don't really need to say too much about him. Like,
Is he the best
yeah,
player you played with then, Mickey?
I would say so. Yeah, and then definitely like I think at that stage Donegal had got to play the 2002 All Ireland. Like, you know, he was a well known player at that stage. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Barry Dunyan came as well. Like Barry only, I think he came on as a sub in the final. That was the only football he played all year because of a very bad injury. But he hadn't played football, I think, in 18 months. And he came on in that final, and you think he was one of the best players. You know, to do that as well is unbelievable. And then left half back, Sean Power from the Strammer. Like Sean would have been on 2004 minor team, but even any time we struggled. Now, Sean had one of those attitudes where he didn't want to commit to the down panel, and like everyone was, he wanted the other things. Like he wanted to play soccer with 1 point and maybe play with Cologne. Like, but he's still naturally one of the best players I'd ever played with.
Yeah, you see, you talk about the MGA boards. I can remember reading them all through the years, and everybody couldn't believe that Sean Power was never on the down panel or never played and things like that.
Yeah, I would say it. Like I don't know for a fact, but I would say it's through his own choice.
Yeah.
Just from knowing him and talking to him the other time, you know, what an unbelievable player. Like, and just there was to say about him, but this is a family show, so I'm not going to repeat it. But it's something that he's that cool. If he went to the toilet, ice cream would come out. He
Yeah.
put them together. So midfield, Dan Gordon. Dan was just see when your kick out wasn't that accurate. As long as you got it up in the air somewhere, he was going to get it.
You get his
Yeah.
hand.
You know, so and it sort of kind of maybe worked against Dan. And he played. I know he played fullback 2010 because like Dan would win you so much ball that he had no entitlement to win whatsoever. You sort of forgot about kick out strategies because why would you need a kick out strategy when you can kick it basically wherever and
And you don't
he'll
get it.
win it or somebody else, their best fielder is chasing him. You know, but he's unbelievable. He played well full back, you know, in the All-Ireland final run too. But he was easy. He was easy to kick to as well, you know. And he an absolute athlete of a man. And then the other midfielder, James Colgan, just he's probably a player I played with growing up and took us by the scruff of the neck a lot of time, you know.
Leader.
Sorry, but
A good leader.
good leader, like, you know, well mature before his times, like, you know, probably out of a wee bit over the top with some of the senior, you know, going into a senior team and trying to tell them what to do. That didn't go down too well, I don't think. But like us, you know, we listened to every word he said, and you know, he never shied away from the hard work. And now, without his goal and without, you know, wouldn't have an all-iron medal in my pocket probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so
It was good to see him back playing regular football on rake last year too, because I know he
yeah,
hasn't really done that in a good few years as far as a scene, you know, of seeing team sheets and seeing different things.
yeah, I think he was he physio with Larry's when Pete McCartan was involved. So
Yeah.
probably focused on them. But yeah, it's nice to see. Like, you know, I'm 33, turn 34 in a couple of weeks, and he's probably the same. So we only have a few years left.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to do it, you might as well get it out of your system. Like.
Yeah.
And then right half forward, Mark Lynch from Derry.
Yeah.
Like full forward in that team, but he usually played half forward. Like class player, and he had a real sense of humour too. Like we played Donegal in the Mechanic Cup, and Donegal's taking the kind of cup really seriously.
Uh-huh.
It was up in Ballyshannon, and they gave us new jerseys and shorts just because it was the start of a new season, new sponsor, and his shorts were too small. But I'm smart. I got my own 38s with me. Because he's more senior than me, he took the 38s off me. And I was running about with a pair of hot pants and that's 32 waist. So I'm very glad. I think there's a few pictures floating about the GA board of Hogan stand after that as well. But no, great player. I don't know how he did hurling football for so long.
Yeah.
At all levels, like just
Grueling.
Centre half forward, Marty Clark. Like say, kind of an absolute wand of a foot, like free kick taking. I know he went to AFL. Even when he did in the AFL, like how quickly did he rise through the ranks there?
Yeah.
I know he did whatever, and then he came home. Even unfortunately, he suffered with illness. He can't play anymore. But it's good to see him putting his nice into the coaching arena, and hopefully.
Yeah, he hasn't stepped away from the Gaelic, which is brilliant. Like.
Yeah, and you can imagine if you did want to play and an illness was stopping you, and you had a young family like he has it, you might just go forget about it.
Mhm.
You know, it's good to see that. Left half forward Rory Hill, because like Rory's the best player in my opinion in our club in the last 20 years. Like there's a lot of backup, but like, I'm not saying like, Paddy Feeney was that good. Teams in America would clamber themselves to get him, and he'd go for somewhere and stuff. And like Rory had a young family, so Rory was always there. Like how many times they hit the ball out to Rory Hill, and he's 20 yards behind somebody and ends up in front of them. You know, he would put his head, and he couldn't shoot, which just is mad for a forward. Like, but he did everything else, and the amount of unselfish. Like, you think of the amount of half backs he would have stopped in his day. Like he was one of them half forwards that almost was an extra defender around midfield that would stop people going through.
But even later on, whenever he went into the full forward line, you pumped the ball on him, Rory Hill was getting him out in front every time. The ball just stuck to him.
It's like that's what you try and teach a lot of the younger forwards. Is if you're in the full forward line and your job is winning primary possession, your job is not to score.
Yeah.
Invariably, you're going to be facing away from the play. Give it to the person who's coming off your shoulder. You can see where the goals are, you know, and that's what worked. And you see him going toward. They weren't recorded at that time, but the amount of goals he would have got by purely running straight at the goalkeeper and fist passing to the back post and someone palmed it in, like.
Yeah.
You know, he had, I think he had a trial or two with the county, and like there's a lot of commitment. But to me, we were lucky he didn't go anywhere near it because we got the best of him there.
He was great for us. Like he was always a go-to, and like you say, if it's standing the full forward line, winning the ball, or winning the ball in the half back line, you know, break ball. He was just, if you ever were looking to have somebody under a ball and you knew they weren't going to drop it or make any issues with it, it was going to be him. Like,
yeah, like I think if you go on Facebook last year or you know that lockdown, you had to name a player. I think he was everybody's answer.
Yeah.
Like, player you'd have back. That speaks volumes. Like.
Yeah. But do you say even if you kick the ball out to him, Mickey, like he was mostly going to win the ball, like upfield, and then even against someone taller than him, he just was a great fielder of the ball. You'd never know where he's kicking the ball to him.
No, he always I knew where I had to kick it before he had moved. So as long as I kicked it into the space, he was going to be on the end of it. He was not to see the amount of kickers I used to slice and go, oh my god, that's going over the sideline. And this big claw would bring it back into play. Like he saved you some amount of times. Like.
Yeah.
Well, the corner forward, Paul McComiskey, like he's kind of unmarkable on his day, and he suffered badly with injuries. But like the time we're talking about who we played with, and when I was playing, he was the best about. Like, you know,
that level as well. You were playing that too. Like he was playing against the best of the best at his age, and he was always standing out and like when it doing it on the big stage.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like
he's brilliant. Forward, people always talk about how Down missed Paul McComiskey in later years after 2010. You know, just for that wee nippy corner forward. Just like the likes of like like
Yeah.
your Mickey Linden type, your nippy corner forward. Down, they always talked about how he just missed Paul McComiskey.
You don't really notice not on TV, especially because we wore loose jerseys as we did before when it was tight fit. But Paul was such a solid lad. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
muscular and lean, and his calves just like a really explosive player. It's one thing being small, but being small and explosive,
Hmm.
it's very, very hard to mark. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
especially when you've a shooting ability like his. Like, um, and then Paddy Cunningham in full forward, like scored 1-9 in the Sigerson final. That man could put it in a 10p piece from anywhere. Like, and he's back playing long-term seniors now.
Hmm.
yeah.
Tough for us all, but he he like sometimes from play people would say, "Oh, he doesn't." But it was almost like like Johnny Wilkinson in the drop kicks. If
Yeah.
you got it to him in a space where you think, "Nah, he can't score from there," he would score.
Yeah.
Like just so accurate, and all come from practice, 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 practice. Very. And I think I don't know if he was captain when Antrim got the Ulster final,
That's
but
right, against Tyrone.
he dragged them to an Ulster final as well. Like,
Yeah.
really, really talented player. Like, and he had a good long county career as well. Now he's back for a bit more.
Yeah, I know he took a bit of illness and then was out for a while, and then now he's
Mhm.
back in, and then with his team Lamjarrig, sure, he basically brought them. I can't remember if they won the championship or got to the final,
Well, they won
but
the championship 2 years
they won
ago.
the
Like,
championship. He basically, he was their main man, and he's what 35 or so.
yeah, like I think he's 2 or 3 years older than me. Like, but
Yeah,
he looks after himself.
yeah, yeah,
The thing is too, there's some players who maybe had longer injuries actually extend their careers out because the fuel they've used in the tank is still there, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Like, if you play 10 years continuous, if you play 4, miss 2, you might actually retire 2 years later than the person who played 10 years straight. And then finally, Andy Moran, because like not only was he a great corner forward and a great player, he was a really good person and he's the most dedicated player I've ever seen because
yeah.
we stayed. Now you're saying about throwing money, Hall, we're kind of half right. And we had halls
When
out in
and whenever I say throwing money, I mean like paying for their education. I don't mean
Germany.
like wee back pockets.
Yes, so we had
Scholarships, I should say.
they brought because of where they live, they brought a lot of them boys into halls, and that nearly kind of made it even better because we were out of the city,
Yeah,
near the gym, near the pitches. Now I stayed at home because I wanted to just really really knuckle down, like, and then but I remember talking. I think Andy was eating digestive biscuit, or no, somebody Pete Donaldson digestive biscuit, which to me is a health snack, like. And he's like, no, I couldn't eat that. And like, you want to see the abs popping out of him. And I remember him doing overhead squats, and I'd never seen an overhead squat in my life. He was doing it in the warm up, and just his mobility, his strength, how dedicated he was, and he was funny too, like because we played as a GMIT Galway. We played them
uh-huh.
in Bethany Park in the quarterfinal or semi-final of the Ryan Cup, and it was just he was going to captain us that game because Pete and Mark were injured. We were doing the warm up, we were running past the pitch, and he played Sligo IT, come on. I was like, what is this boy talking about? He played for Sligo IT for 4 years and he just did it out of habit.
But like, if you were talking about Andy Moran is one of your players. One of the best players never to win an All Ireland. Like he's right up there. Like he
Yeah,
was Mayo's go-to forward for years. Like it was so good.
yeah. People would have said, "Oh, he came there because of Mickey Moran." Mickey Moran managed Mayo, and then that's not the case. Like Mickey, I don't, from my memory, didn't give Andy a wild lot of game time.
Yeah,
And
Mhm.
Andy strikes me as the type of person, if he wasn't getting game time, you're not his friend because he's
yeah,
so competitive. Like, I'm not saying he would be rude or ignorant, like, but he just wanted to play all the time. He actually got a lot of professionalism because we played Antrim kind of challenge game in Jordanstown one Friday night. And he actually stayed for it. That shows you what type of person he was. Like, it was
yeah,
8 o'clock in Belfast, a 4 hour drive home for the weekend. And he there was no food after training. There usually wasn't because it's just the way it's university sort yourself out. Like, but he hoped around the bottom of his car, found a pound, bought a Mars bar on the way home. Not did it for 4 hours. Um, but on Monday he made a real case for this is absolutely ridiculous. Like you're making us do ice baths and strength conditioning and play all these challenge games and training, and you won't give us the nutrition in the window we're supposed to have it. It's ridiculous. And then from then on, we got meal after training all the time on the right food at the right time. So he wasn't gonna just if he didn't say something was right, he said it like.
Yeah.
So
No, well, that's a pretty good top 15 there. If you're going to look at that, like you have a good blend of lads in it too as well. Also, is there any honourable mentions that you sort of were, thinking about?
I like it was Damien McCall from Tyrone. Like, I don't think Damien played as much senior football through injury and stuff. Damien, brilliant corner forward. Colin Kavanagh speaks for himself.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't put Collie in because he didn't always play midfield. And he kind of would have moved from the forward line out. And like when you're in the forward line, I don't really have a lot to do with you, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
The way his game was, he was involved a lot in the middle of third, but never really too many kickouts because Benny was the bigger of the midfielders. He was more the person you would try and hit. And then like Paddy Finney, like brilliant footballer for us, really talented footballer. Devlin, I give Devlin a mention because he does win or did win a lot of ball, but he gets get back up to training Devlin when it's not. And then played with so many players, not because I'm just so old, if you know what I mean. Like you play so many, like Rory Gillen, the most talented player our club's probably ever had, also the laziest. And that's some feat, like Conor Lunny is probably the worst player I've ever played with. Like
You've also been in so many football in circles. Like if you think like the older Clann teams, the new generation one, the down teams, the Sigersons teams, you know what I mean? It's
a lot to remember. You don't want to leave anybody out. Now, there's just too many kind of to mention. Like, but like Johnny Burns has left foot. Like I remember we got promoted in Division 3 or Division 2 from Division 3 against Drumgaff down in Tullish, and our former manager was like, the car park and he was standing behind the net. Johnny scored 45 from the wrong side, and just as it dropped and hit the ball stopper, he turned around, got in his car, and drove home. And I seen that standing in the 21. Just a frustratingly good talent. But when I started playing, I was very lucky because I was scared to even open my mouth. I had like Sean McCusker and Ivor Bell, or Ivor and Shane Bell, and then Paddy Burns and people like that. Just people who would take no SH1T on a pitch, and that actually molded you into being a bit more respectful. You weren't a mouthpiece when you were younger. Like you almost, not that they were mouthpieces, but some of them were, especially Johnny Burns. But it's amazing. Like if I look back, look at the senior team. Like look at Paul Morgan. Like I played with Paul for 4 years now. I played with Paul's dad for a number of years. Like I Callum Wilson or Callum Burns, who's in the senior panel now. Like I remember Callum being born. I'm neighbours with my parents are neighbours with his mum and dad. I'm far too old to be doing this. Like but Clann were blessed with a lot of very talented players. Also a lot of rockets as well. Like, but that kind of made it even more fun.
Yeah.
My most enjoyable part of my career wasn't really winning. It sounds bad to say this, but the socialising side of Clann around 2006, 7, 8, 9 was the best nights I've ever had in my life. Like after there was one Sunday, do you remember we beat Glasgow in the playoffs? To stay up, and we all went to Thompson's, and do you the guy Justin Harrison used to play for Ulster, and he won the Rugby World Cup with Australia, I think it was.
Big second row.
Yeah, and he was and who started a fight with him? You can almost guess. Arn Nelson. He's the smallest player in our team. So he starts trying to start a fight with him, and Brendan Donaghy, the nicest player you ever knows, has to try out the intermediary. And I just looked at Harrison, looked at Arn, looked at Danish, get out of here and just let him work. But in fairness, it worked out for the best. Like, but that brought us together as a team. I think that's kind of forgot about now. I know a lot of the younger boys will say the older boys don't include me, but just kind of you have to want to be included yourself. Like, you know, we kind of just followed around the older players, not because you should do that, it's because well, they're here, they're part of the senior team. This is what the senior team do. I want to be part of the senior team. Let's join in what they do. Like when you go about doing your own thing in your own social circles and make no effort to integrate in the team, you can hardly be surprised when there is splinter groups within the team. Now, I think that's something that we're all working on, and hopefully it goes away. But the older boys are definitely conscious. We want to make them feel welcome, but we can't. You know, I'm not going to get into the bot now. I'm 40-year-old.
Well, even from those older teams, obviously being around it with Dad always being involved, like you could just sense and feel the togetherness and like the actual team bond. Like you knew once you crossed the white line, like the other 14 players in that pitch, like they had your back, and so did all the other ones. Like not said that it's not there now, but it was that strong back then with those. I don't know if it was the personalities, the people, or the way it got on, but I always sensed that's what it was. Just
I think you're 100% right. And even before or even after that, like I can remember we played our glass in Kilkee at playoff, and I caught a ball, just passed it on, and the rat, don't know his real name, but he was always known as the rat. He shouldered me into the post, and when I was on the post, he stood on the back of my head. The next thing I looked up, and Lockie and somebody else was beating the absolute head off him, and it turned into a Royal Rumble. Like that is what I remember. Like, and I say JP Gartland wouldn't have spoke 2 words to me before that. Not that he was ignorant, and he just did his own thing. Goalkeepers have no interest in him. But he was the first one, having my back when I was under pressure. Like, one in, all in type thing. Like.
Yeah.
No, well, Becky, we'll just start to sort of wrap it up. Just the last sort of questions we have is just like with COVID, the impact's big on the GA at the minute, especially with down game. We just got word that the leagues aren't starting to the 20th of May.
Yeah.
And we mightn't even just well depends how it goes. It mightn't even start on the 20th of May. National leagues for down mightn't even start. We just don't know. But it has had a big impact. And I hope we get out of it soon. And I hope that the future. What do you think for the future of Clann Banna then? Past all this here stuff.
I think it's very, very bright. The committee
and how long do you intend to be in that future for? And I know you have a young family there with you talk about rockets being in Clann Banna. I would say your youngest is a rocket itself. I look forward to seeing the Snapchats of him stealing his brother's food and all. It's a cracker.
Look, like the government must give us money to keep him. Like he's just away. I don't really like the oldest boy Daniel is so placid and kind and respectful, and the other one is just an absolute monster. Like, but he's a lovable wee monster, and he kicks the football everywhere now. So probably he's more likely to try and take it up. But the committee and the actual culture and the community side of things in the last, 6-7 years has really, really come on. Like I can remember Barbara Gribben ringing me when we were getting all Iron final to wish me luck. And I think I was the only person I spoke to. Like if one of our players got in Iron final now, say under 17s, we had a player starting in that team. Can you imagine the furore in our club? And that's because there's so many people involved, so many people that care. Like take the mothers and others. Like they almost appreciate and get the sense of community and group and team more than maybe we do, because we take it for granted. We think a team will always be there. They've forced the team to be there.
Yeah.
You know, they're fighting for what they have. Like a lot of times, and me included, like I would take for granted the video analysis. I like the video analysis and I do it. I know there's a lot of people don't log into it, and it costs money, and it's a good thing to have. But the community have big plans, and hopefully I'm part of helping bring that forward and the fundraising. Like we have a lot of people giving so generously their time and money. But the main thing is there's loads when we are open for business, there's loads of kids, there's loads of enjoyment, there's loads of participation. That's the main thing, is like the Gaelic's not elite. Gaelic games aren't for elite people only. It's not just about making a good senior team. It's about giving people something to belong to. It's for everybody.
Yeah.
I remember when I played under 14, you remember Ciarán was on that team. There's a lot of them players, Brad, that cutting kicks no off the rope, but they were treated no differently than if they were county star. Like I remember your dad or Marty Nelson or Mickey Gill or Sean Quinn treated those players with as much respect and put as much effort in them as if they were the best footballer in the world, because it was about having people participating, not just there's six good players, the rest you just fill around. And I see that in there. Like, there's so much effort into developing all types of players, and that's the important thing. Like,
Yeah, there was a lot of talented lads there as well who, for the most part, just came up for a bit of crack more or less on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, whatever it was. But I could like it's from dad being there and being up and round. I can always remember the buzz and the crack. Like there was never like a dull moment with them all.
do you remember do you remember the crowds we used to get for the under 16 minor games when I was playing the year above? Like we used to play Mitchell. It's like there was bigger crowds than there were senior games.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, it was they were good players, and like a lot of them didn't stick at you because let's be honest, the coach around that time was too big a distraction. It was open 3 nights a week and it was packed, and there was money for everybody because the Celtic Tiger, and they were all learning a trade and getting paid more than we're getting paid now.
Mhm.
But no, I have huge high hopes, and hopefully I can work to be part of it. Now, in terms of keep on playing, I probably, when you can sort of look over your shoulder and see there's two goalkeepers ready to take your spot.
Me and
There
Hod
are,
have one for you for a few years yet, so don't worry. Reserves.
you want me full force reserves? I'm all up for that now.
I know I remember you playing midfield reserves years ago too.
I remember your Kevin giving me a dressing down because I wore a pair of Nike shorts in midfield and part
Oh, that'll be him, all right.
yeah. So, but that's playing for enjoyment. It'd be nice. Like it's just unfortunate. Like a few of the boys live in Belfast or further afield now. Players that play senior football. I can imagine. I just look at say Mailbridge Serge and Danny Coulter. He plays with his mates. It'd be nice to keep that kind of
Yeah.
in touch, and it's good for the younger players because, like, if you're competitive now, you're competitive the rest of your life. You have it in you,
Mhm.
and you know how to play football. It might be at the right speed, but you can still do the basic tricks. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, but Mickey, suppose we'll just wrap it up there. But we'd just like to thank you, me and Brad. Thanks very much for being the first guest on the Two Ciaráns podcast, and hopefully, fingers crossed now that people want to come on now.
No, thanks, Ryan. Well, it couldn't be any worse than me, so I wish you all the best. Podge and Raj.
That's brilliant, Mickey. Thanks very much. All right.
All right.
All right.